help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.
All right, everyone, welcome to the very first episode of What's the Rush podcast. I'm Rebecca Rusch, your host, and I am so excited to have Dr. Mike here, Michael Gervais of Finding Mastery, to help me kick it off and set the stage. And there was a very purposeful intention in asking you to join me on this new adventure because you've been kind of part of my life and as a peer, as a mentor, for a long time. And you really helped me through some dark spots in my career recently. And that's kind of the point of What's the Rush is about slowing down, letting go, maybe looking inward a little bit. And obviously you're an expert in that field and you really did throw me a lifeline about a year and a half ago when I reached out for some help. And so I thought it would be great for this podcast in me opening up and you helping set the psychology stage of opening up because that's what you do for a living. And our paths have crossed. We both worked with Red Bull for quite some time, and I remember first hearing about you when you were working with Felix Baumgartner, jumping from space, Stratos, and was like, wow. But then recently, I will just say about a year and a half ago, through my concussion recovery, post-concussion symptoms that were really dark and gnarly, I reached out to you via text, and we don't know each other that well. And I just said, hey, I need some help. And you actually phoned me back right away and we had a conversation. And so you really have shaped kind of the trajectory of this in helping me get out of some really dark spots. And so the goal of What's the Rush is to share that kind of experience with other people. So thank you for doing this with me.
Oh my goodness. What a warm and thoughtful, and it is exactly what I would imagine from you. And so thank you for the kind words, the kind introduction to your community. And I like the thing that I wanted to say is like, it's about time, Rebecca. Like for you to do this, it really is about time. And I've been a student of what you've done for a long time as well. And so the Red Bull world is there's a certain language that happens with folks inside of Red Bull and outside around, put really what it takes to push right to the edges. And you understand the full alphabet. And so I love having conversations with you and your peers about what it takes to be one's very best. And for me, you're the epitome of it. And so I'm equally honored to be here with you.
I love that you said that because this is the concept. People look at me as this high achiever. They look at you as the same way. You've got it all figured out. You're breaking records, doing all this hardcore physical stuff. But quite honestly, the internal world for me has been undeveloped until really the last 9 or 10 years. And that is why I don't feel like an expert in that field. And so I'm opening myself up and my struggles to kind of show people that, hey, we're all human. And even what you might see on the surface of high achievement doesn't always tell the whole picture. And I haven't developed that internal language that you've studied. You've worked with people your whole entire life. So I love that you started off with Rebecca's got it all figured out. She's a hard charger. Because as you know, I went through a really dark period the last few years of post-concussion syndrome, not being able to even go outside. Not being able to ride my bike, barely able to walk the dogs. And do you remember that phone call that
Oh,
we
of
had?
course. Oh, of course. Yeah.
What do you remember from it?
I remember you were hurting, scared. You were you're in a state that um, it felt like it was really shaky grounds and you weren't sure how it was going to go. That's what I remember most of it. I remember it was short, it
Yeah,
was direct, it was to the point. It
yeah,
was there was no by either of us, there was no flowery anything. It was like, okay, listen, let's get to plan,
yeah.
and tell me what's happening. What are the symptoms? What are you going through? Okay, good. What are the next steps? Bang. And I just remember it being warm and very tactical at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah, and I was really fearful. And I had hidden my symptoms for a couple years from my sponsors, my partners. the outside world, for fear of losing my job or looking weak or, you know, all those things, and fear of losing my identity, the identity that you referred to of this hardcore athlete that I built my whole entire life. And so reaching out to you was definitely a cry for help, and you answered right away, and you got real straight with me and real honest, and you said you need a therapist and you need a hardcore one that's going to push you because you're strong and you're going to push back. And that was a real turning point for me. So thank you. And what it's about time for the podcast. People have been asking me this for a long time, but quite honestly, I was afraid. I was afraid I couldn't do it. I was afraid what people don't want to hear from me. And it really was these sort of harder challenges that I do feel like people want to hear from. The times when I the film Blood Road or talking about this concussion recovery, that's when people seem to resonate. So why is it, I want to ask you, why is it that we're afraid to show ourselves, our true selves to the world? And you wrote a whole book about it. The first rule of mastery is stop worrying about what other people are thinking. So I want to talk about, why is that the first rule?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, there's a lot in your question, so I'll start. I'll start somewhere, and then let's see where it goes. Is that if I were to say to you, the first rule of health is to stop drinking poison, you'd go, yeah, yeah, right, of course, stop drinking poison. Yeah, and I mean, it's this counterintuitive kind of, I don't know, irreverent thought that stop drinking poison would be the first way to, get your health on track. And much of the poison from a psychological, emotional standpoint for us in modern times is this unproductive obsession about what they are thinking about us.
Mhm.
And we are social beings. We are more like a coral reef than another analogy I could create for humans. Like, we are meant to work together. That's biologically very sound, very clear thought. And it makes sense that the majority of our brain is designed for survival. This is not new information. However, it's not just physical survival from like the dangers of the wild. Belonging is part of survival, because when you're part of a community that's thriving and um, you have a meaningful place in it, you're not likely to be ejected or pushed out to the wild. So belonging is an important part of that survival strategy. And we don't have the same dangers that we had 200,000 years ago. We don't have saber-tooths and wildebeest chasing us and warring tribes that, when they come near us are hostile and dangerous potentially. So we don't have the same threats, but we have that same brain mechanism from
Mhm.
long ago, which is scan the world to find the danger. And humans and the rejection of the tribe you want to be part of or you think you're part of, the rejection of them is a near death sentence. And so that's why when we're going to a holiday party and everything feels like it's supposed to be festive, but there's that little palpation that, that little nervousness as you're walking into the front door, that, like, this idea of fear of people's opinions, FOPO, it shows up in so many ways. It's like when you're sitting and wanting to have a meal by yourself, but reflexively you pull out your phone or you're reading something because you don't want to look like you're just bored or lonely.
Yeah.
It's holding a cocktail at an event, even though you don't want to drink, but you don't want to be the odd one out. It's laughing at a joke that you don't quite get, but you don't want to, again, be the odd one out. And so there's these very subtle to dramatic experiences of making sure that we're in the okay, that we are being accepted by others, because even the smallest hint at rejection can be wildly threatening. And so until we examine that, until we begin to really work from the inside out, and this is like the path of mastery, really, to work from the inside out, to examine yourself, to study yourself, to honestly meet yourself, to invest deeply in what you are capable of, and that's capable, like who you're capable of being.
Mhm.
That until those commitments are made, we get ragdolled around by the external demands of the world and our interpretation of potential threats. So it's not until, so you could be a high performer and not be on the path of mastery. So high performance has a bit of a different feel than this earnest inside out commitment to really know yourself so that you don't get whipped around by the external world, so that you can be there to help others, to be a fully contributing member to the coral reef.
So is that mastery then? Is someone can be skillful at their endeavors, but not necessarily a master if they haven't gone inside.
Yeah, that is 100% correct. And
Mm.
mastery is multidimensional. There's at least two major components that we can talk about. There's the path, which is like the journey, the process, the ecosystem. And then there's the expression. And so the path is like the figuring it out, right?
Mhm.
All of the triumphs and the pains, all of the experiences that help um, us better understand what the deeper part of life is. So that's the path of mastery. And
Mhm.
most people on the path of mastery are less interested in their craft and more interested in the expression through their craft. So
Mhm.
mark that for just a moment.
Mm.
And because that builds to the second part, or the second component of mastery, which is, you know, the the uncommon and honest approach to be your very best, to be able to express yourself through a craft, and to do that artistically. So there's the path piece, and there's the expression of a craft. And there's lots of crafts. My craft is very different than your craft,
Right.
and so um, I'm just a high performer, and I say that flippantly. If I haven't done the deep internal work to be able to artistically express myself through the craft in calm environments, unpredictable VUCA-based environments, hostile environments. Yeah. So, anyways, those are the two main components.
So that sort of, teeter-totter point is kind of, I'm thinking about my trajectory of being an athlete for world-class athlete for 3 decades. And
Yeah.
I would say based on your definition, I was not a master because there has been this very pivotal point, kind of prompted by the journey to go find my father in Vietnam, riding the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and then this concussion that really stopped me um, from your definition of doing the craft, and then now the expression through craft. And in the darkest part of this internal exploration in the last couple of years, I kept thinking to myself, do I need to kill the athlete identity in order to grow and move forward? And I've come to realize, and I love your definition, that I don't need to kill the athlete because that's part of me. And I think that was this real hard struggle for me, learning that and hearing through you now that I can be an athlete and express myself in a different way,
Yeah, I really appreciate where you're going, because the idea that I am an athlete, it's too simple.
right?
That is it's one of the most dangerous words I think a young person can say, is when you say, like, how do you describe yourself? And they say, oh, I'm a baseball player, or I'm a football player, or I'm a
Right.
mountain biker. Like, what does that mean? I am just this one narrow part of, a larger life. And it goes to the Zen koan, like, when you meet the Buddha, kill him. That that this And why do I bring that for? Because you're not just an athlete. You're not just a whatever. It's too multidimensional to you,
Right.
to all of us. And when you meet the ideal version, all of us have an internal Buddha, according to the philosophy, is when you meet this ideal version, kill that too. You're talking about killing the athlete. It's not necessarily just kill the athlete, but it's do not be encumbered by an ideal of anything. You are
Right.
so much more than what you do. And I want to introduce a hinge idea, is the difference between being and doing.
Mhm.
And so again, between path and expression. It's too trite to say, we're human beings, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard that. But there is a tension between, in our Western world, certainly, this relentless beating of the drum to do more.
Right.
to do the extraordinary. And if I can do the uncommon extraordinary, then I'm okay.
Mhm.
And this idea that I need to do more to be more is just exhausting. And one of my friends just went through a pretty heavy experience, and I asked him about it. Like, what's the insight that you're pulling from it?
Mhm.
And the heavy insight, um, LA had a radical fire blaze,
Yeah.
and so much of LA has been kind of stripped down. And certainly one of the more beautiful communities in Southern California is evaporated. The elementary schools is burnt. Like 70% of the houses in this community are burnt. The two local community stores, and they're down to the ground. So, and I asked him, like, what's the insight? And he kind of welled up, and he said, being in service.
Mm.
Like, it got really clear. If you can help, you help.
Mm.
And it reminds me of the people that, mm, well, I'll use myself, is that, like, I want to give, I want to add to the community. I know you do as well. And I have this idea that at some point I'll be able to give a lot, like financial donations or like more time in service at the community level. But right now I'm not doing as much as I'd like to. I'm giving, but not as much, because there's still some of that scarcity. Once I have enough, then I'll give even more.
Mm.
And once I do enough, then I'll be okay. It's still inside me, even though I think about it a lot and I meditate on it and I write about it. But that tension between being and doing, I think, is something for, I would imagine your community is hearing this and going, I see it, me too. Like,
Mhm.
that hustle hard thing, that's broken.
And
It's
yeah,
it's broken.
I'm exhausted from it, and I literally think
Yeah.
I burnt myself out and went
Oh, yeah,
in
you pushed.
deep and dark into it, and I'm grateful for, the concussion and the hit on my head, because it actually physically made me stop. And for the first time, stop moving, stop chasing, stop going to the next adventure. And really I was in survival mode. And you talk about being in service. You absolutely were in service to me with that one phone call. And there were a
Yeah.
few really key people to help
Mm,
me realize that, yeah, I don't have to do more. And it might look different. And that's really kind of the concept behind all of this, and letting go of the athlete identity ego and opening it up. Do you remember our Finding Mastery when I was on Finding Mastery as your
of course.
guest?
Of course. Yeah.
I went back and listened to that a couple days ago, and it's really insightful. It was about 3.5 years ago, maybe. It was right before I got the concussion. And you asked me some really deep questions, and my answers then are really interesting because I would answer them now. I can see and go, oh yeah, I don't know that I was being really truthful and honest and open. You asked me why I went to Alaska and do the Iditarod and do these gnarly cold big expeditions, and you point blank asked me if it was about ego and about being relevant and about showing people I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I answered you kinda wishy-washy.
Yeah, it's so fun. I know. Yeah.
I can look now and say, I wasn't being honest then. I mean, I love the adventure, it was amazing internally, for my own confidence, but I had to I was still proving to myself and to the rest of my community that I was worthy through
You
that
you know, I it's almost like there is an advantage in deeply studying psychology, because there are some frameworks that are useful when trying to understand yourself and other people. And in my life, I've been asked a lot, like, how did you do it? Like, how did you work with such a wide range of world's best? Like, how? And I always said that's the wrong question. I never set out to work with world's best. I just wanted to work with people that were really hungry
Mm.
to go the distance, to explore potential. And then I realized that that wasn't totally accurate. It was honest, but not totally accurate. And what was happening for me is, and I'm going to use this framework in psychology, is when there's a crisis, dysfunction, small trauma, big trauma, when there's something in early childhood, there's a handful of masks that the young kids adopt,
Mhm.
right? And so I never really thought that my family we had trauma, because from the outside it looked really nice.
Mhm.
Middle income, socioeconomic status, everything looked really good. However, dad was an alcoholic drug user and mom cleaned it all up. And I love my dad and I love my mom.
Mhm.
That was my honest early experience. And to be seen, guess what I did? I became the epitome of one of those masks, which is to be a high performer.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't in athletics. It happened to be in this, what I think is a beautiful science of psychology. So I needed to get better. I loved it. I found natural interest in it, but I needed to get better to be seen. Holy shit. I couldn't, I wasn't even available to say that. Like my first 20 years
Right.
of doing, I was so enthralled and in it, that I didn't have that ability to see it. Albeit my mentor, Gary de Blasio, who knows me really, really well, he's known me since I was 16 years old. He would always say, Mike, be honest. Why are you working this hard? Be
Mm.
honest. Be honest with yourself. I was like, yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm understanding it differently now.
And you have the framework now do you turn that on yourself and ask yourself those questions? And you have the framework now, but are you still honest with yourself and authentic?
I try.
Yeah.
We all need mirrors held up.
Yeah.
And so there's 3 processes that I think are the most important to really meet yourself. One is meditation. So it
Mhm.
helps, right? There's nowhere to go. And
Yeah.
you just, once you get down a couple levels, you're like, ooh, that part of me is part of me. And, it's where the dark corners, if you will. The other is journaling.
Mhm.
If you're BSing yourself or not. And, the third is conversations with people of wisdom. Those are the ones that are available for most people. Those 3 are, I would call, foundational. The fourth is when you push to the edge in an extreme environment, and in that environment, what you're about. If you hesitate, if you want relief, if you are able to stay grounded. Like you really meet yourself in those dangerous environments, which I know you intimately understand. And I'm not suggesting that's for the
Yeah.
mainstream. That's for highly skilled people that can use that as a way to meet yourself. But for most of us, it's the first 3.
Mhm. I mean, I love those are all accessible to people, and there's a couple of things there I want to latch on to. You know, you're a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't meditate. I can't sit still. I can't do it." Or I don't want to journal. And I mean, therein is part of the answer. And for me, sitting meditation has always been hard and a skill I'm working on. I used to say, "Oh, well, I'm meditating all the time out, when I'm riding my bike for 7 hours and, I'm doing moving meditation." But that's not really accurate because there's so much input I'm thinking and I'm processing, but I'm not really meditating because I'm reading the trail, I'm feeling the wind, I'm looking at the mountains. There is still a distraction in my mind that it's still thoughtful. And I don't wear headphones when I ride and do all that stuff, but it's not meditation. And it took me a while to understand the difference between being thoughtful and introspective versus meditating.
Oh, good distinction. Thoughtful and introspection is like awesome. Great. And there's lots of ways we can do it. Meditation is the practice of being more aware
Mhm.
without judgment, without critique.
Right.
It's not a thinking practice. It's an observation practice.
Mhm.
And that idea like, oh, I can't do it. I get too unsettled, or it's just not for me. Yeah, maybe, maybe that is the case. And I would say try the other 2 first then.
Mhm.
And then I would also kind of double click and say, that's me too.
Yeah.
Like I'm fidgety the first handful of moments when I'm meditating. And sometimes I'll be done I've been meditating for 28 years now. And
Mhm.
sometimes I get done with the 20 minutes or 10 minutes and it's the longest 20 minutes of my life. Like it's a real civil war. It's really, really, and sometimes it's like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, and most of the times it's somewhere in between. And so here's maybe a little gem for folks that are more fidgety than, what they think maybe meditation would allow, is that if you sit down, or stand or lay down, doesn't matter. I'm meditating first thing in the morning, right when my alarm goes off. So that's when I'm doing it now, because I'm already kind of in a glow. I don't need to work really hard.
Right back asleep if I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, yeah. You kind of make a decision like, okay,
Yeah.
this is your work time, to kind of get centered rather than more sleep. But okay, whatever the kind of posture is, if you will, what I end up doing is, as soon as my mind wanders from my inhale or my exhale or whatever the task at hand is, as soon as it wanders, I go, right, that's it. Good. Nice work.
Mhm.
Because I'm aware that
Yeah.
my mind has wandered. And so starting over 1,000 times is really what a 10-minute meditation is about. And that's work.
I have this concept that I'm developing called the athlete operating system. And it's basically taking everything I know and my expertise of being an athlete and training to be an athlete and taking that to the internal and taking it to the rest of to work. So like you said, sometimes you meditate is great, sometimes not. Sometimes workouts are great, sometimes they're not. Sometimes the intervals suck and sometimes they don't. You've got to have rest days, you've got to have hard days, you've got to have periodization. And so I'm really trying to take my expertise in the physical realm and take what I know and bring that to the whole body and bring that to everything that we're doing. So the way that you're talking about meditation, it's like, yeah, not every workout is great, but you still do it. You go back the next day and you still do it. And if you find a skill in athletics that, you're not good at, you're like, oh, okay, there's something I can work on. There's actually an area of improvement instead of saying, oh, I suck, I'm terrible, And I think if we can take that kind of athletic for anyone who's an athlete and understands the physical practice of training and being healthy, it goes to the mind too.
It's such a good point. And I want to reinforce it with one of the Olympians that I just was supporting in Paris, in the Paris Games, 2024 Games. It was probably, I don't know, year 2 of the 4-year quad. And I kind of casually asked, like, what makes a great practice for you? And without any hesitation, she said, oh, by the end of practice, knowing what to get better at.
Mm.
So that means that she's got to push and to see where things are breaking down. So practice, if her end game in practice is to know with clarity what to work on to get better, that means that she's got to understand where that kind of failure, mistake making, rattling experience takes place so that she can redesign, or re-engineer a better practice for next time. But that requires pushing to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And why do we meditate? So we can become more aware. Why is awareness so important? Because first and foremost, if you struggle with awareness, I'm going to say you're not even in the world of high performance.
Mm-hmm.
And think about the hierarchy. I'm saying, like, there's performance, there's high performance, and there's mastery.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can't really be in the high performance game if you struggle with awareness. And I'm talking about awareness of your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
awareness of your emotions, awareness of your physiology, awareness of the external world. If you don't, or if you struggle with being aware of any one of those 4, you will likely be on your heels in most environments rather than up on your toes, like with that switched on, like, presence. So that's using some of the athletic framing on why awareness is so important. And the ancients would describe the richness of awareness is so that you can be more present.
Mm.
And when you are more present, over time, you get to the truth of what is. And over time, when you get to cobble together a bunch of small t truths, you get to wisdom. So awareness is the path to wisdom. And I don't know if you know a wise person or if you're familiar with any of them, but they just see and experience the world so simply. And so
talking to a wise
no,
person
no.
now.
I'm still on the path. I'm still trying to sort it out. So, but it's just so much easier when you've cobbled together some wisdom about how you work or how
Mhm.
people work or the world works. And
It
yeah,
comes back to your book. I mean, not worrying about what other people think, having this really deep internal awareness is going to allow you to be like, yeah, I know who I am. It doesn't matter if this sponsor or that person thinks something else because I'm really clear. And all of this that you're saying is actually, it's reinforcing why I'm so interested in these conversations in this podcast, because I would not put myself as a master or even high performer, because there was a real lack of self-awareness of my internal being during my physical competitive days. And I would say I was very hyper aware of my physicality and the mindset of keeping going or not quitting or taking care of myself. But
oh, I totally disagree with you.
oh,
Out of with all respect,
not feel anything.
no, but
You're trained to like push it away, not think about it.
that's right.
So
You are on the path of high performance, and you are marked. We all know it as one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. At what you did. So you are on the path of high performance, which there's a metallic numbness to the high performance world.
mm,
Like we give medals,
yeah,
we give awards.
yeah.
There's no awards in the path of mastery. It's warmer. There's a contour to it. There's it's less movable.
Mhm.
And so you were not on the path of mastery. And so you have a different contour now. You got hit on
Yeah.
the head, maybe, and maybe that did it. Who knows? But like there was probably 15 other things that led you to say, there's more. Wait, hold
Yeah.
on. There's more. And so you were a high performer, if not the high performer in your industry. You were squarely committed to the path of high performance. And at some point you said, wait, there's a different path.
Right.
And that's the path of mastery.
Yeah. It's exciting to me because I can see, instead of coming from a dark period like my life is over, kill the athlete, I'm actually can see now that there's a really cool trajectory towards actual mastery.
That's
And
it.
because I'm getting to know myself from the inside out, which is what your work is all about.
That's it. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that exciting? Like what else? Honestly. Okay. So I'll say the sentence so I don't have to meander. To really know yourself, to meet yourself, to study yourself. I said that earlier, is the path of mastery.
Mm,
And then here's the big point, so that you can help others do the
right.
same,
Right.
so that you can be a better custodian in relationships with other people, with the planet, with technology. Like that's the whole idea, is to be a contributing member to this coral reef. But
Yeah.
if you're floundering, you're unaware, you're
Yeah.
all about you
Mhm.
and fill in the blanks, like
Yeah.
that's not it. It's so unsatisfying. And Harvard had the big 80-year study. It's probably like 82 years now, and where they studied people that were the most happy, the most fulfilled, and two variables rose above all the others of the high table of the good life, and it was purpose and connection.
Yeah.
So when they strip away all of the variables, and this was mostly men that they studied, but it's not as out of balance as we might imagine. It's fairly balanced. What led to them saying that they lived a good life at the end of their life? They said, "Yeah, I was connected to a purpose." What does that mean? They were connected to something bigger than themselves and something that really mattered to them. And the second part is they felt like they were connected to other people.
Yeah.
And if you get those two things right,
Well, okay, I love this. So I just took your Finding My Purpose class
oh, you did. Yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
very recently. And in this period of transition of like, who am I? What am I going to be doing? I took the class. It was a 7-day online class. It was awesome. I'm like,
Rebecca, that was the pilot. You
I,
were you were the you, one of the, yeah, I know. We're just trying to figure
I
it out.
my homework for 7 days, and
Mhm.
and it was it was a really cool class because you sort of pushed some value statements, but it wasn't a heavy lift.
Right.
But it got pretty deep into it. So I came up with a purpose statement
Come on.
that I would love to share, and then
Yes.
ask you to share your purpose statement.
Yeah.
And the class was led by, former Olympic athletes and amazing mindset coaches that you have. And yeah, I dove in and I engaged in the community. And there's something about engaging in a community that you don't really know the people,
Hmm.
that you kind of can say whatever you want. You can be as vulnerable as you want because you're never going to see these people again. It's not your husband or your real close peer group. So there's actually a opening and vulnerability that's allowed in those kind of sessions. But I came up with
Wait. Before you go there,
Yeah.
I want to just hit that statement. That is okay, experiences are neutral. It's not until you ascribe meaning to the experience that it becomes
That's right.
something, and that's an old insight from kind of the first
Mhm.
philosophers and psychologists. It's like, even Carl Jung is like, it has to go through your tumbler first.
Yeah.
And so your tumbler, what I just heard you say, and this is why like psychology and frameworks are so important, is you said, I showed up and I was able to just kind of explore without being encumbered by what people will think of me.
Right.
There are plenty of people that go through online trainings or even go to the university for the first time if they're a young kid and they don't know anybody, but they feel like they have to be something to be accepted by others.
And
But that it's evidence that you are more interested in getting to the truth as opposed to being accepted by other people. That that's a really hard, well earned, um, well fought for relief from where most people's brains are.
I'm going to push back on you on that because I wasn't publicly saying, oh, I'm developing a mission statement. I went to a safe, anonymous class, who
Oh, there you
doesn't
go.
have an outside. They don't look at
Okay.
me as Rebecca as a world class. They don't even know me. And so I appreciate the compliment, but I would almost say that as a public figure, it was actually safer for me to go somewhere anonymous and
There
to
you
just
go. Okay,
be
cool.
whoever I wanted to be.
So there's still some more work.
Yeah,
And then,
there is
yeah,
more work.
that's awesome. And we're going to get to your purpose here in a minute. There's still more work. I'm wondering how this podcast is going to like accelerate the freedom that maybe is holding you back in some ways about what they might be thinking.
It is partial. It's motivated by my own personal experience, but also my own curiosity. I want to learn and hear from other people, but I also want to be an example of vulnerability and, hardcore, hard charging, got it all figured out, queen of pain. I'm, finding I need to be honest because it's quite exhausting wearing that armor, and I'm done with it because I'm too tired
Have
to
you
keep
read
wearing it.
have you read The Knight in Rusty Armor?
No.
Oh, it's poorly written.
Okay.
It's poorly written. It's a small book. It's in like a weird, old English. I do want you to read it. It's a
Okay.
great analogy. You brought it forward. It's the knight in rusty armor.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the idea is like armors versus, armored shoes versus moccasins.
Right.
It's, like
That is exactly what
yeah.
what's the rush is about, is stripping away. What can we lose to actually become a more whole version of ourselves?
Do you think that you'll talk about like where you suffer? Do you think you'll go into that part of will that come forward in the conversations with people? Like what your deeper suffering is?
Well, I'll ask you, do you think it's good to share your personal experiences as well as hear from other people?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. I so I
the fine balance between it being about me, because I don't
That's
want it
right.
to always be about me. I want to be in service to other people and use my vulnerabilities to help other people. So I'm not sure how to answer that question.
So the Finding Mastery podcast, we've been doing it for 9 years.
Yeah.
And early on, like kind of step 1, I remember that I didn't know how to do it. And so I just asked a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And then I got a bunch of feedback. This is me getting whipped around, by the world a little bit. A bunch of feedback like, "No, Mike, we're here for you. Like, we want to hear what you have to say. It's great that you've got world-class guests on, but
Yeah.
like we, we're here because we want to hear your part too."
Mhm.
And then I started sharing and it was like, I don't know, it's probably like a 60-40, their
Okay.
insights to my
Yeah.
insights. And then I got a bunch of feedback was like, "Hey, how about it? Why don't you let the guests talk?" And I was like, oh my God, okay, right. And then I found like this 80-20 balance,
Okay.
where it was 80 them, 20 me.
Mhm.
And now the feedback is more, Mike, please, more.
Mm.
So I think I share that because I was calibrating to what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I think where I'm at now is like, I want to sit with another person and be in a conversation.
Mm.
And that's not a, I'm the questioner and you're the expert. That's like two souls, two humans, two paths trying to understand. And the best ones are when we're asking each other questions.
Yeah.
So if there's any kind of thought I could have for you is like create the space for people to ask you questions too.
Yeah.
And then it's organic,
Well,
know?
you really mastered that in our interview in Finding Mastery. You asked me why. You also asked me, are you running away or running to something?
Yeah.
Really intuitive question. And then you also asked me if I was trying to be my best or the best.
Mhm.
And those I left there. I didn't answer any of them very eloquently. I left there and actually journaled and thought about them. And so they were really good questions that I think anyone listening to this could maybe start as journal prompts for themselves.
Amazing.
You know?
Amazing. However, what I didn't do is I didn't create enough space for you to ask me questions.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm hoping that your guests, I hope you create the right space. I feel like I could ask you anything because of our history in it. That I could say, like, are you gonna go to suffering? And you're like, well, I don't know. What do you think? Like that type of engagement is just, it's two people trying to figure it out. And
Right.
the community, they'll be like, yeah, go there or don't go there. But I, I think it's valuable for the heroes of our world, you, the cool kids, the ones that are like doing things that are aspirational to so many of us, when they slow down and they say, hey, there's another dimension that's
Yeah.
probably more important, which is the inner life, the way that the relationship I have with myself. And you know what? Here's my suffering.
Yeah.
I think it's, I think it's radical.
So can we go back to your purpose state?
Not until I know your purpose. Yeah.
My purpose statement ties right in with all of this, which is very cool.
Okay.
A lot of what we're saying. And my purpose statement that was from your class, Finding Your Purpose, is it's an invitation. And it is let's explore within and without.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm inviting people. I want to explore myself. I want everyone to get outside and explore. I want them to be healthy physically, mentally, but I want to do it with other people.
Very cool.
And so that is, yeah, let's explore within and without, which is really kind of where we're going with this. And
And
yeah,
those words are there's so many double entendres. You know, you're an explorer. You know, let's explore the within, and the without is really cool. To me, it sounds like it's almost a hint at the outside world, but
yeah,
it's the double entendre is like without materials, without
mhm,
um,
yeah,
all of the extra things that maybe we're striving and straining to attain. You're saying let's explore without those things as well. Like I think that is super clever. Yeah.
it was hard to get to it. And through the class, it was like, I'm not going to come up with anything good. And it just sort of popped in, which was really great. It was a great class. And
Thank
you
you.
shared that your staff and that you do purpose statements all the time. And so do you have a current one that
Oh
you
yeah, thank you, thank you for like giving me some grace. Can you imagine if I was like, yeah, I don't know my purpose. I'm still sorting it out. I just taught a class in it, but yeah, yeah, no, that's good. In plain language, my purpose is to help people understand what they're capable of. Like
Mhm.
to really help people flourish is my purpose. That's why I'm here. That's why I built Finding Mastery. That's it. And then you double click and you say, oh, okay, so how are you gonna do that? Um, it's helping. It's through the psychology of high performance, the psychology of mastery, to help people live in the present moment more often. And so, if at the end of my life somebody said, you know, I don't know what it was, but like he just helped me live in the present more often. And I'd be like, oh, I did it. Like that to me is the entry gate into people understanding what they're capable of living a great life. The keyhole is through the present moment. And so that's where high performance is expressed. It's where the moments of mastery are met. It's where wisdom is revealed. It's where relationships are experienced, the present moment. And it sounds so trite. It's overused in so many ways, but it is radically hard to increase the frequency of time that you and I spend in the present moment. And that's what I want to help people do. Spend more time right here, right now. And extreme environments are great teachers. Hostile, rugged, consequential environments, those are great teachers, but those are not for the unskilled. So that's why I don't point to like, hey, go grab a parachute and huck yourself off of, the
Yeah.
75-foot spine. Like that, I would never suggest that.
Well, the hostile environments, for me in the outdoors, that has been my teacher
Mhm.
in my life. I'm curious though, do we have to suffer a hardship or a trauma or fall off the horse or have some really hard thing happen to truly wake up and learn the lessons and
Okay.
become more whole? Does
Cool.
it do you have to go through, this darkness to sort of get into a light and a whole person?
Cool question. I want to bridge one piece here, which is that your mother nature in consequential environments is a great teacher. It was your teacher. It was a teacher of mine too for a long time. So I really respect it. And for the non-adventurous folks, physically adventurous, emotional conversations with loved ones, intimate, deep, meaningful conversations, it does the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's available every day.
Yeah.
So like it's not left for Mother Nature out there. You are, and I am Mother Nature. And so when we work with our own Mother Nature in intimate conversations with other people, all the same lessons are there. All the same physiology is there. It's the same light up, if you will, that takes place. Okay, so that's a bridge.
Exploring within and without.
You're nailing it.
Yeah.
And so do you need hardship? There's no escaping it. Nobody's getting through this world without trauma, with big T, small t, without suffering. So I think the way that I work with it, 20 years ago, I'd say, unfortunately, the only reason people change is because of pain. And the science would support that statement. And now I think about it a little bit differently, which is like, if nobody's escaping the life without it, why not go straight to it and to understand it and maybe be a little bit better with it? And rather than doing all of these, I don't know, funky contortions to avoid it,
Right.
and why not just go meet it? And sometimes it's unexpected, but if you can get on your front foot and go examine suffering and examine the pain that you've already experienced in your life, you'll be better when there's an unanticipated thing that takes place.
I'd love to share a story that reinforces that, because 2015, I went to ride the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the place where my dad was shot down. He died in the Vietnam-American conflict when I was 3. I never knew him. And there was always this like unanswered question for me. Who was this guy? What was this map coordinate like? And so I ended up combining my adventurous spirit with going and riding 1,200 miles and going into the jungles and just see where the plane crashed. And that was a really cool expedition for me in a lot of ways. And it was, everyone said to me, that must have been amazing closure. And I was like, no. It was an opening. It was the beginning of my relationship with my father and hearing about him and being where he was last alive and meeting people who served, on both sides. And so it was such a different expedition for me because it did have that internal aspect, and the physical part of it was not hard for me. It was the real emotional part. And that's where the creative director, Nicholas Shrunk, I had to journal every day. It was my first foray into journaling. That was for the film, so they had my thoughts down. but that was a really pivotal ride for me, and something that kind of is reinforcing what you're saying here.
Yeah, you know the magic of doing that internal work. We, of course, you and I are going to point to it. And again, the work comes in a lot of forms, but the three big ones are journaling, meditation, and conversation with people of wisdom. And then underneath of that, there's a whole set of skills that you can develop, like the skill of being calm or confident or optimism, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what I love that you just shared though is that what's the right word here? It's not envy, jealous. It's not those words, but it's like an admiration for highly skilled people in, let's say, the craft of being a director or a photographer,
Mhm.
maybe. And they have this deep sensitivity of the inner world. And so behind the lens, if you're a photographer, I've always thought like if the life of a photographer of subjects and this radical intimacy veiled by this piece of glass, which is the camera lens. And the great photographers, they can pull and they capture, and there's
Yeah.
something, it's almost like a psychological session
Mhm.
with an untrained person.
Yeah.
But when they're deeply tuned, it is amazing. So your director or your creative director did something akin to that.
Yeah.
It wasn't your sports psych that said, hey, while you're doing this thing, go journal. It was the director. And I have such admiration for people that can blend their craft with the tunement of psychology. Those are folks typically that
Yeah.
are emblems of mastery.
It was very special. And to go back to your previous point, we had never talked about the trauma of my dad's death. Nobody talked about the Vietnam War. It just wasn't really ever brought up. And so it wasn't until my 40s where we were being interviewed, we're talking about it. It was like breaking a bone that hadn't healed right, and it was very painful. But now I look at it, it was a joyous, really important. And fast forward, my mom died just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
I'm grieving, and that's traumatic, but I have better tools now to actually sit with it and be in it instead of push it under the carpet and not deal with it.
There
And
you go.
so it's actually, like you said, everyone is going to go through trauma, but do you have the tools to actually go through it a little more gracefully?
What was your mother's name?
Judy.
What was your relationship like with her?
Oh, I mean, she was a single mom, 2 kids, worked in the computer industry, like high-level executive in tech. In that age, she
Wow.
definitely worked in a man's world and raised 2 kids by herself, never remarried. So she was a real hard charger, high achiever.
Mm.
Mm. And my sister and I inherited that from her, the like independent, get it done, just, keep going. My sister's a retired 2-star general in the Air Force.
That
When
does
I
not surprise me.
Right,
But
you're right, and it came
wow.
from and that work ethic and just keep going, and that served my sister and I very well for a lot of our career, most of our career. But there is an undeveloped part, the softer side, the, slowing down side, the taking a minute. And that's part I'm
That's
developing.
what you're
But
doing right now. Do you know
yeah,
that this is like, I don't know how you'll maybe weave it, but I always have this idea. It really struck me when my grandmother passed away. I was really close with. And I thought, how am I going to honor? And I wasn't clear at the time. And it was like this gentle kindness that she brought of seeing like the good in people.
yeah,
And I'm like, that's how I'm going to do it. Like that, I need that. So I wonder how like and that changes generations,
yeah.
right? There's a generational pattern because I didn't have it. It wasn't developed in me. She had it. And I'm like, I want to take that forward. I wonder how you'll take this softer side, the more being side, the contemplative aspect of life, how that's going to change the next generation.
Well, to go
And
to
honoring the men.
back
Yeah.
to your point, so the 2 main things that, in the happiness study is purpose and community. My mom was an absolute community builder. She wrote all the Christmas cards, knew everybody's birthday, loved to get people together for family occasions or have a big dinner party. And so she had that community spirit. And that is what I intend to carry forward is bringing people together. Because I'm known for solo, alone, I got this.
Yeah, right. That's right.
We lived for in years, but in the second half of her life, she was a real connector and a real like getting people together kind of a person. And so she did have those traits. I just didn't see them while she was heavy into her professional career. And yeah.
I know you're right in the beginnings of the grieving process, and there's no marker of time, and there's no right or wrong way to do it, but there is a process for grief. And I'm so excited for you, though. I'm so excited for what you're building and the intentionality with it. And if I could be so bold, is maybe I'll do it for you right now, is for the listener, please tell 10 people. Subscribe, like, do all of those things, and then tell 10 people. And what I would love for you to do right now is actually take your friend's phone, go to the podcast feed, open it up, smile, and look at them and say, I've got something that's going to change your life. Go to, what's the name of the podcast? Rebecca's What's the Rush? Go to the What's the Rush podcast, like it, subscribe to it, and then smile, and then show the phone back to your friend, and like build the community.
I do want to build a community and let people know it's okay to be vulnerable, to be, to take a minute to look inward, that are, to shed the armor that we all build around ourselves, to this protective shield that really isn't protecting us from anything. It's actually keeping us shielded from the rest of the world.
Amazing. I'm so excited for you. Oh yeah.
I love for you to share just a little bit. You shared your purpose statement.
Yep.
Since this is called What's the Rush, I would love to know from you. Well, at first I want to say thank you. You gave us some great tools of the journaling and meditation, two main things that are proven to create happiness is purpose and
connection. Purpose and connection.
Yeah.
And you made the journaling prompt uniquely yours, which is cool. Yeah. Okay, good.
I want to know, is there something in your life that you're working on slowing down or shedding, getting rid of?
Yeah. So every year I sit with my team, with myself, with my family, and in different, environments, and just try to challenge each other to think about what is the year of. And it's the year of exercise, and it's 1 or 2 words. The last 4 years has been the year of play. And I'm doing a redo, number 5. And so that is what I'm working on again this year. I naturally come into the world pretty intense. I come in leading more with my head than my heart. I come in leading with the desire for high standards rather than like an organic unfolding. And so all of those are great. They've led me to really some wonderful insights and places and a nice business and great family and fill in the blanks. But I need more play. And so why is that so important to me? I felt like I grew up pretty early because Dad's condition and my need to be on my toes to read the room. So there was a little bit of like, which dad do I get? Yeah. And so there's an adulting that has to, like a seriousness that has to happen in that unpredictability. And so I don't want anyone to ever think like I'll feel bad for Mike. That's not it. But there's just a cost. There's a great benefit to a lot of things that I've learned from all of my early experiences. But one of the things I didn't play enough. And so I'm on year 5. I'm getting better. My wife gave me a B-, so that I'm okay. I'm trying to get to like a B+, A-, so why, and again, what I'm trying to shed is the unidimensionality of intensity and high standards, and having a more contour to that, which is appreciate the unfolding, a bit more patience, And my muse is a panda. And so there's no predators to a panda.
Yeah.
So they just roll around, flop around, have fun. They're just as free as you can be.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on.
And I love that. I just reread the Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Dan Millman.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
classic.
actually journaled that I want to be the playful warrior.
Come on.
And that was something that I kind of took from that of I can be a warrior, but I could be a playful warrior.
That's it. Yeah. The
So,
panda, right? And so
like
Kung Fu Panda is like what my son, he's 16. He's like, Dad, is that really your favorite movie? You know, I'm like, yeah, I think it is.
Well, in honor of your intention to play and shed some of the seriousness, I'd love to invite you on a bike ride or a hike, or let's go play in the outdoors somewhere, like easy, fun,
Yeah.
jump in a cold lake in the mountains, do something like that, because I'm also trying to find more play.
Hey, that sounds awesome. And you know what I immediately go to is like, I'm like, oh yeah, right. Like it's going to be playful with you. It's going to be like, you're going to be at, I don't know, 30 miles an hour. And I'm going to be like trying to keep up at, 17, like, so that I immediately go to like, it'll be serious.
In your face of like, oh no, you're too fast for me. I can't keep, but I'm being honest with you that I intend to play as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, good.
A little bit of the seriousness of, that hardcore warrior. So
Where's home base for you? I have you like in Montana.
I live in Idaho. Yeah.
Idaho. That's close. Yeah.
I live in a place called Smiley Creek.
Oh, this is perfect. This
So
is perfect for you.
Bring your panda suit to Smiley.
Smiley Creek. So fun, Rebecca. Thank you.
Dr. Mike, amazing. I really appreciate you setting the stage for this and really kicking this off, this internal adventure. There is no one else that could have set this in the way that you did. And I also want to thank you for really lifting me up in periods where I really needed some help and I needed a hand, and
Honored.
you were there.
Honored. And thank you for all the kind words. I'm really excited for what you're building. It's fun to be, your first guest here. And I want to just, to the listener, I want to speak one more time. Tell people, this is how you give Rebecca, the chance to build the community that is in her heart. And then you have an extended tribe that you get to have these conversations with more naturally. Grab people's phones, go to the podcast feed, download it. No one does this alone. And so she might not ask you for it. So I'm going to be the first to say, tell people about it.
Thank you. And I was bold to ask you to come be on the guest, and I'm asking a whole bunch of, pretty high powered, awesome people, and they're saying yes. And so it's really great to have the community's support and to have people resonate with it. So
Awesome.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for our first conversation for What's the Rush? And I'll see you in another Finding Mastery class pretty soon, I'm sure.
I need to get my panda suit first. And then, okay. That's a great idea. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, it's a long and dusty road and a hot and heavy load. Folks I meet ain't always kind. Some are bad, some are good, some have done the best they could. Some have tried to ease my troubling mind. And I can't help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.